Well, if you want me to just tell you the answer, it's no. But it depends. Now let me explain. What's up? My name's Jay LeBlanc, wedding photographer and photo video educator. I hear this question so often from photographers who shoot weddings. Do I need a wide angle lens? I don't know. Google it. You probably did, which is how you found this video. Now, when I say wide angle lens, I mean something wider than 35 millimeters. Yeah, I know 35 millimeters is technically wide angle, but we're talking wider than that. Wider than 35 millimeters, a 24, a 15, something really wide. I think it's pretty safe to assume that if you're gonna shoot weddings, you already know that you need something around that 35 millimeter range, so hopefully that's already part of your kit. You also know you're gonna need something around that 50 millimeter range, you know, the nifty 50 or some type of zoom that has 50 millimeters within that range, because that's what our human eye sees. And it's probably one of the most versatile lenses you can have at a wedding. So I assume you know that you need a 50. And you obviously know that a wedding entails a lot of portraits. So you're gonna want some type of lens that's really good for portraits. Whether it's a 70 to 200, an 85, a 105, you know the deal. You probably already own something in that range, so we're good. But let's talk about that wide angle. But now the question is, how often do you need something wider than 35 millimeters? So before I go any further, I'll tell you, I use one Lightroom catalog per calendar year. So I just took a look back at my 2023 Lightroom catalog at every single picture that I took. I went into the metadata, filtered it by only my 15 to 35 millimeter lens, my wide angle lens. Now I'm not looking at what millimeter every single picture was shot at, but I assume most of them aren't shot at 35 millimeters. While some of them obviously are, I would say the majority is wider than that. There's a reason why I'm putting that lens on my camera, because my main lens, the 28 to 70, has 35 millimeters in it. So if I want to shoot at 35, I don't need to take that lens off my camera. So if I'm putting the 15 to 35 on my camera, there's a reason for it, and that's to shoot wide. And after looking through all of my metadata, I shot approximately 12.5% of all pictures in 2023 with my 15 to 35. Now that's not a huge majority of my images, but it's a good amount. So as I already mentioned, I personally use the Canon RF 15 to 35. And here's my quick little review of it if that's a lens that you're interested in. It's a phenomenal lens. It is a awesome wide angle lens. I love that it has image stabilization built into it. I'm coming from the EF 16 to 35, which didn't have IS built into it. So being able to shoot wide angle at low shutter speeds, especially when I'm taking my nighttime environmental portraits, clutch. Love that lens. So if you're thinking about getting it, I definitely recommend it. It also focuses super fast on my R5 and R6. I love using it on the dance floor, and as we all know, a dance floor at a wedding is usually not the best lighting. So the fact that this lens can focus so fast in dim lighting, boom, you get another gold star. Are we counting gold stars? How many is that so far? I'll just put some gold stars right here on the screen. Another big plus of it compared to my 16 to 35 is it has way less distortion. With some wide angle lenses, especially cheaper ones or older ones, you'll see at the edges of the image, crazy distortion. It'll look like people's faces are being warped or stretched. And this is why people, when they're taking group pictures, don't like being at the edge of the frame, because they get stretched and it makes them look 3 times as wide as they actually are. It's a pro tip. You don't want to look fat on a cheap wide angle lens. Don't stand at the edge of the frame. And if you want to look really skinny, stand right in the middle, because that's what distortion does on a wide angle lens. If you didn't know, now you know. You're welcome. And I know we're talking about weddings here, but another great use for my 15 to 35 is whenever I shoot real estate. I don't do it a ton, but I do shoot several properties every year. And if you're in the Canon ecosystem, that is the only lens that you need for shooting real estate. Unless you're shooting video as well, or you're highlighting some of the features of the house, then you might also want a 50. But for the most part, to shoot traditional pictures that are gonna be listed on MLS, the 15 to 35 gets the job done very well. And listen, if you need to make something look bigger on a wide angle lens, put it closer to the edge of the frame. If you want to make something look smaller, put it towards the middle. I'm just saying. Maybe your feet picture career is lacking a little bit and we need to mix it up a little here. Just trying to help somebody out. So what is that? Like 5 gold stars? 6 gold stars? It's a bunch of gold stars. Thanks for coming, gold stars. Do me a huge favor. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you can just lightly click that button. Maybe while you're down there, go ahead and hit the like as well. Yeah, that just helps me stay really motivated. As long as I get 1 new subscriber per video, it just makes me eager to make the next one. So somebody, please subscribe. Thank you. And let's keep going. So right off the bat, what's a wide angle lens good for? How about shooting wide? Wow, good one, Jay. I bet nobody could have figured that one out. Genius. Shooting in tight spaces or shooting large group shots, a wide angle lens is really going to be your best friend. As well as being more immersed in storytelling. You're a lot more close and personal to people, so you're really experiencing that story that you're trying to tell with the people that are part of that story. And as the photographer, I feel like you are a small part of that story that you're telling that is somebody's wedding day. But what's a wide angle lens not so good for? First of all, distortion. Some of the cheaper wide angle lenses have really bad distortion, especially on the edges of the frame, so that's something that you got to watch out for. They're also not ideal for portraits. Maybe if you want to shoot a big wide environmental portrait, sure, but if we're going to be looking for a nice glamour shot of a bride, she probably doesn't want to be shot with a wide angle lens. I will say there's also a slight learning curve. Because you're dealing with these wide angle lenses, you're getting a lot more in frame. You're going to have to be more cognizant of what's at the edges of your frame, as well as any slight tilt to your camera will distort vertical lines that are in your picture, such as the corners of walls or a building or something like that. Some type of architectural element that we know is supposed to be vertical, but when we shoot with a wide angle lens, might go like this. Probably not how the architect designed the building, but some buildings are. And another thing that's not ideal for is any detail pictures. Usually you don't see too many product photographers shooting with a wide angle lens, so we're not going to shoot the details on a wedding day with a wide angle lens. So you might ask, when do I personally use a wide angle lens the most on a wedding day? There's really 3 main times that I'm going to use a wide angle lens at a wedding. The first being during the getting ready process. Sometimes when the girls are getting ready, they're getting ready in very tight hotel rooms, and they still want those pictures of them as a group, maybe on the couch or on the bed, and there's just not that much room to work. I may not be able to back up. There's been times where the girls are like, we want a picture of all of us hanging out on the bed. Well, some of these hotel rooms, you have about a foot of walking space between the bottom of the bed and a dresser. And then behind that dresser is a wall. And you just can't physically back up far enough to get everybody in the frame at 35 millimeters. So having a wide angle lens then definitely comes into play. It's also great for taking wide environmental portraits. I love doing this specifically with my nighttime pictures. I like showing off the venue at night with the bride and groom usually silhouetted somewhere in the picture, and it really looks cool and dramatic because it's not something that you see in every wedding photographer's portfolio, is these nighttime wide angle pictures. I personally love shooting like this, so if you want to steal my idea, go right ahead. By all means, take it. It's also great for getting into the mix on the dance floor with the guests. It especially makes for some fun pictures on the dance floor after everybody's had a couple drinks and we're starting to feel ourselves and our dance moves, even though sober you would look at that, cringe a little bit. But when I get into the middle of the dance floor, I love getting wide angle pictures. Now, not every photographer is going to be like me. When you're out there as the photographer in the middle of the dance floor, you got to be feeling the music too. You got to be swaying your hips, singing along, dancing a little bit. Hey, if Aunt Susan wants to grab you and dance with you a little bit, you got to be up for it, because people are going to feed off of your energy. And if they see the photographer out there dancing, have a good time, when you pick up your camera and start shooting them, they're going to keep dancing and having a good time. If they see you standing there stiff, just pointing the camera with a grouchy face, they're probably not going to give you the same energy that they would if you were showing that you're having a good time as well. People tend to match other people's energy. So if you are in the middle of the dance floor with your wide angle lens, having a good time, people are probably going to give you some good reactions so you can get some really cool pictures. Shooting this way is just something that I personally love to do. It's part of my style, it's part of who I am, and it's part of my personality. I know this isn't for every photographer, but I really enjoy doing this. And listen, to me, weddings are fun. They're not just a job. And I like to enjoy myself while I'm at weddings. And it comes across in my pictures. So what I'm saying is, don't be a dick and expect to get good pictures of people having fun. But listen, I know photographers that just stand on the edge of the dance floor with their 35 millimeter or longer, and they still get good pictures. But hey, you can be the grouchy person on the sideline, or you can be the person in the middle having some fun, enjoying themselves. It's up to you. So I know I said I only had 3 main uses, which were getting ready, my environmental portrait, and the dance floor, But I got a couple bonus tips for you. Bonus tip number 1. Sometimes the bride and groom request a big group shot on the dance floor with all of their guests. And having a nice wide angle lens is really useful for getting everybody in frame during this picture. Bonus tip number 2. Typically I shoot ceremonies with my 28-70 and 70-200, but if I have a ceremony site that's a little bit smaller than normal, I will throw on my 15-35 and shoot that instead of the 70-200 because I can get some really cool wide shots and get everything in frame to really show off that unique ceremony site. And bonus tip number 3. If there's kids at the wedding, throw your wide angle lens on, get right in their face and take a wide angle picture and then show them the back of your camera. This tip also works for if you're shooting family portraits. Kids absolutely love this picture. They think it's so funny because it distorts their face and makes their nose and their eyes look so big, and they think it's hilarious. And then you become their best friend. And if they're not cooperating for pictures for you, this might just help loosen them up and get them used to you being there pointing a camera at them. Now, could you get by in these situations without the wide angle lens? Yeah, absolutely. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it's not a necessity. During the getting ready process, you can take the girls to another location that maybe has better lighting or a little bit more room. That way you don't need that wide angle lens to shoot the picture. But sometimes the girls request that picture on the bed in the hotel room or on the couch in the hotel room, and they want that picture in the getting ready space. So you're gonna have to make sure you communicate that with them ahead of time if that's something that they want. And I'll be honest with you, I have had multiple weddings where people request that picture in the getting ready space, and even 24mm wasn't wide enough to shoot everybody sitting on the couch in the bridal suite. So just keep that in mind. It's only happened a handful of times, but it does happen. Now, my wide angle environmental portraits, you can absolutely shoot that with a 35mm. You can shoot it with a 50mm. Maybe you want to shoot a panorama. If you haven't heard of it before, check out the Ryan Brenizer method. It's really cool for making what would be a wide angle image shooting with a longer lens. Now, it does take a little bit of skill and post-processing, so it's not just a one shot and done, but if you've never heard of it before, check it out. I'll throw a link above to one of his videos where he explains how to do it. It's a really cool method. If you haven't tried it before, I recommend trying it. It's not the easiest thing to do at every wedding, but when you figure out how to do it, you get some cool results. As far as the dance floor pictures, you don't have to stand on the dance floor. You can hang out off to the side, shooting into the dance floor. Nobody said you have to get into the mix, so you can still shoot that with a 35, a 50, 85, whatever you feel comfortable with. You're the photographer, you have your style. You don't necessarily need that wide angle lens on the dance floor. And for that big group picture, you don't necessarily need a super wide angle lens for that. You just won't be able to stack people as wide. You'd have to stack them deep. I always usually get up on a chair so I can get high and shoot down at a big crowd of people, especially when we're talking 200 plus people. Having a wide angle lens makes that a little bit easier, but you don't need it. You can stack people deeper rather than wider and still get everybody in the picture. So in conclusion, yes, you can get by without it. It may limit you in some situations, but you can find creative ways to work around it. Personally, I love shooting with a wide angle lens because so many wedding pictures are shot at 50mm or 85, and I love showing wide angle images just because it's something different than what you see as every other wedding picture. Now, if you're on the fence at all about adding a wide angle lens to your kit and this video helped you out at all, I would love it if you can just drop a like below and leave a comment. Let me know if a wide angle lens is already part of your kit or you're considering adding one. If you have any other questions regarding adding the wide angle lens to your wedding kit, let me know and I'll definitely get back to you. And until the next video, peace.